The alarms hit all at once, shrill, overlapping, relentless. Every screen in the control room flashed core service slow, then response time exceeded. The graphs spiked like heartbeats in cardiac arrest. My phone vibrated on the desk, CEO 12 missed calls. The air felt electric, heavy with recycled panic. I stared at the monitor, fingers frozen above the keyboard. 3 hours ago, I'd been escorted out of this same room. Now the system I built was collapsing without me. 3 hours earlier, I had fought through a 16-hour defense shift code reviews, live patching, triage calls. My mind was a fog of caffeine and protocol. Just 1 minute, I told myself. 1 minute to rest my eyes. When I opened them, Evan Lang stood in front of me with Pierce at his shoulder. Evan's voice cracked through the hum of the servers. "You're fired. No warning. No hearing. Just the son of the CEO playing commander." Pierce didn't speak. He only straightened his tie and let the silence do the damage. HR marked it as administrative leave. But everyone knew what it meant. Evan's trial authority wasn't supposed to extend that far. Still, I walked out, badge deactivated before I hit the lobby. What they didn't understand was that deep scan, the heart of Aegis Core, could only wake under 2 signatures stored on our HSM, mine and Pierce's. His credential had quietly expired weeks ago, delayed under his watch. So, under Policy 7.2, I revoked my own key to preserve chain integrity. No signatures, no deep scan. The defense grid was armed but locked, a gun with no trigger. 2 years before that, my garage lab burned to the ground. Insurance called it negligence. I rebuilt from scavenged parts, wrote 3 words on my new wall: prevent, detect, self-recover. That mantra became Aegis Core. Now, alarms screamed in the dark while I watched remotely from my personal terminal. The network's heartbeat faltered. Someone shouted orders through an open mic, Pierce. Frantic. They'd cut me out to look strong, but in doing so, they'd just removed the key holder. And outside my window, as the city lights flickered, the crash clock began its quiet countdown. By morning, the official email arrived. Administrative leave pending review. No signature, no sender name, just the sterile phrasing of corporate mercy. I sat in my apartment overlooking the river, watching Austin wake through the glass. The skyline shimmered like nothing had happened, but my inbox told another story. A message from Pierce Rough Night. Don't take it personally. Evan's learning leadership under pressure. Polite, perfectly phrased. A knife wrapped in velvet, publicly. Pierce kept his tone warm, defending my contribution, telling others that transitions were always hard. Privately, he'd aligned himself with Evan. I could see it in the meeting summaries forwarded by well-meaning colleagues. Every line carried his fingerprints phrases like temporary oversight and legacy dependency. I had become a bullet point. Still, habit dies hard. I opened EmberWatch, the read-only pilot tool I'd built to monitor field health signals. The access token was still live. Through it, I could see the country's network pulse hospital grids, logistics routes, the quiet lifeblood of the system I'd once protected. At first, the data looked stable. Then, small warnings began to flicker across the dashboard: packet delays, checksum mismatches, rising latency from the Dallas node. Nothing fatal, but familiar. The same pattern that usually preceded a core overload. The break glass protocol, our emergency override, should have caught it. But I remembered Pierce had postponed its configuration 3 times to streamline rollout. He'd signed the extension himself. Without that safeguard, no one could access Deep Scan if the quorum failed, and it had failed the minute my key was revoked. I traced a pulse through the telemetry, following it like a heartbeat fading under strain. For a moment, I almost called Victor, but that would look desperate, like I was trying to save my job. So I closed the window instead, letting the hum of the city drown the silence. Pierce had always smiled when he cut corners, soft voice, calm tone, eyes that never blinked at risk. He'd told me once that good leadership was knowing when to look away. Now, as EmberWatch blinked another silent warning, I wondered how long he could keep looking away. The system was holding for now, but a wall without its key doesn't stand forever. By noon, Calderian's internal channels pulsed with tension. Evan had been granted interim operational authority until his father returned from the investor summit. His first act was predictable. He gave Pierce full control of the Aegis Core cluster. From the outside, the transition looked smooth. Pierce thanked the team, spoke about continuity, even used the word family in his broadcast, but beneath the soft tone, the system had already begun to resist. Aegis Core was built to verify trust before execution. Without 2 valid HSM signatures, Deep Scan would never unlock. Pierce entered his credentials. The prompt blinked red quorum not met. He tried again. Same response. The shield refused to obey. Through Ember Watch, I could see the ripple of warnings bloom across the telemetry latency spreading from hospital nodes into logistics clusters. The network was holding, but barely. Each unprocessed queue added pressure to the next. Pierce sent messages through the engineering channel. All systems stable, adjusting load manually. He didn't mention the failed quorum. He couldn't. That field wasn't designed to display on dashboards only signers could see it. Evan stopped by my desk once, months ago, asking why I'd written those constraints into the code. I told him, a system that obeys everyone obeys no one. He laughed then, thinking it was a joke. Now, he was learning what it meant. The auto-containment protocols, our last defense against cascading downtime, required Deep Scan's verification layer. Without it, the clusters couldn't isolate failures. The architecture would do exactly what it was told, even if what it was told led straight to collapse. On my screen, telemetry lines thickened, their color shifting from amber to orange. Somewhere in the logs, a maintenance bot looped endlessly, trying to request permission that no longer existed. Evan's emails to the board began to sound defensive. Phrases like temporary glitch and rolling recovery appeared in quick succession. I knew the pattern too well. Warnings first, containment denied, then one silent pause before everything gave way. The wall hadn't fallen yet, but it had started to shake. 3 hours after my suspension, the first core hospital cluster froze. Not slowed frozen. The telemetry spike hit like a heartbeat flatlining. On the public dashboard, every metric turned gray. Inside Calderian, alarms cascaded through every department. The service level agreement counter began its grim countdown, 5 minutes of permissible downtime per month. At minute 6, the penalty ladder would trigger fines, regulator alerts, breach notices. Through Ember Watch, I watched the collapse unfold in real time. Deep Scan off. Quorum not met. It was the clean, merciless truth of the system doing exactly what it was designed to do: refuse untrusted hands. Pierce and Evan were on a live call with the infrastructure team when the logs started streaming across my secondary monitor. I wasn't supposed to have access, but Ember Watch's read-only feed was still linked to my development key. The pattern was unmistakable, a stalled authentication chain. Each signature request bouncing back unanswered. The defense grid was locked in place, waiting for approval that would never come. Messages flew through my inbox from old teammates, half-coded, half-panicked. They're saying it's your fault. Pierce told the board your key caused a deadlock. Should I wipe the cache, I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new draft, addressed to Victor Lang, CC'd Legal and Security. Subject Policy 7.2 Enforcement Log Clarification, not sabotage. I stopped signing under Policy 7. 2. When the backup key expired, renewal was delayed under Pierce's directive. Break glass not configured. The system is following protocol. Not me. I read it twice before sending. No defense, no emotion. Just the chain of cause and effect. On the next Ember Watch refresh, Dallas went dark, then Denver. The counter ticked past 5 minutes. Somewhere inside Calderian's glass tower, the boardroom lights must have flickered under the weight of those numbers. They would call it a failure. Pierce would call it a technical hiccup, but the logs never lied. And as the alerts bled red across the screen, I realized the crash clock had finally reached 0. By the time dawn reached Austin, Calderion's executive floor was sealed off. Emergency lights glowed above the glass boardroom like a warning halo. I wasn't there, but the feed of internal minutes reached me through the same quiet channels that had always carried truth faster than PR. The penalties had already begun. Hospitals rerouted patient data manually, losing hours of telemetry. Logistics partners froze contracts. Regulators issued the first compliance alert before sunrise. Every clause of the SLA penalty ladder was alive now, each one a silent deduction that no apology could undo. Inside that room, the board sat in a semicircle of tension. Evan stood near the window, shoulders rigid. Pierce occupied the center, pacing as if motion could soften accountability. On the wall, the slide deck was brutally simple. Aegis Core Deep Scan. On handles, full live load with integrity preserved. Pierce's patch Deep Scan off fails under sustained concurrency. 67% drop in response threshold. No commentary, just 2 lines and a graph. Someone had uploaded my old system audit, one of those clean, precise documents that never needed defense. The timestamp predated my suspension. Every test, every signature validation, every backup procedure outlined exactly how the system should behave. A director leaned toward another and whispered, "She's waiting." Across the table, Evan's jaw tightened. He tried to redirect. The problem isn't her departure, it's process continuity, but even his voice trembled on the last word. Victor Lang's chair remained empty, the screen at its head showing a muted, connecting banner. He was still airborne, somewhere between New York and Austin. When that feed went live, no one doubted where the blame would land. Pierce opened his laptop to project a recovery timeline. The plan was shallow reroute traffic, disable Deep Scan entirely, bypass the signature chain until further notice. The kind of fix that looked good on a slide and died on contact with reality. Outside the boardroom, the hallway monitors displayed the live uptime counter in crimson. No one spoke. Each passing minute was a reminder that the company was bleeding, and the only person who could stop it was no longer on the payroll. The first leak didn't come from the press, it came from inside. Early that morning, an ethics report landed in Calderion's compliance inbox, unsigned but thorough. It traced every modification Pierce had made since my suspension, line by line. The metadata told a story he couldn't erase. Half the commits in his so-called emergency build were direct copies of my protected code blocks. The rest were failed attempts to bypass the layered authentication I'd written 2 years earlier. He could assemble the machine, but he couldn't wake it. The report attached screenshots from the audit trail, HSM log excerpts, and version histories that matched my own local backups exactly. Whoever sent it knew where to look. By noon, whispers had started in engineering channels quiet, precise, dangerous. People remembered. The interns he'd dismissed in meetings. The design reviews where he'd taken credit for others' work. The old Slack threads that showed my code reviews signed under his name during his probation period. Pierce had always moved like someone untouchable steady voice. Perfect posture, the calm of a man used to applause. But the silence around him began to shift. A few teammates stopped replying to his updates. The project manager requested a separate meeting for legal continuity. HR flagged an old entry in his personnel file credit misrepresentation. 5 years ago, resolved internally. From my apartment, I watched the tremors through Emberwatch logs and employee metrics dashboards, tiny traces of human panic disguised as data. Code check-ins dropped by half. Late-night pushes vanished. Someone in compliance ran a recursive audit on Pierce's access privileges and quietly suspended 2 of them. He must have felt it, the tightening circle, the polite smiles in the cafeteria, the sudden absence of eye contact. Every empire he built on charm and plausible deniability was beginning to fracture. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. Systems reveal truth better than people do. The layers were doing their job, now detect, isolate, self-recover. And as Caldarian's tower settled into its uneasy silence, one question lingered like static between the floors when the mask breaks. Does he fall alone or try to drag the rest down with him 2 days after the crash? My phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in months. The caller ID read Lang, Victor. His voice, calm but frayed at the edges, carried no pretense. Rowan, we need you back. Not as staff consultant. Limited access. Legal will send terms in 10. By the time the document arrived, the board had already approved it under the emergency clause. Statement of work, external stabilization consultant. Scope read-only, advisory authority. It was everything they'd stripped from me handed back under another name. When I entered the building again, the air felt heavier, almost rehearsed. Security badges tracked every movement. The same engineers who'd watched me walk out now greeted me with quiet nods, eyes avoiding the cameras. In conference room 12B, the break glass procedure was waiting. Legal, the chief information security officer, and 2 witnesses from compliance were present. Every action recorded, every timestamp notarized. Pierce wasn't there. Evan sat in silence, arms folded, trying to look composed. I set my personal HSM on the table, the same device that had once been revoked by Policy 7.2. The CISO slid the sealed backup across to me, gloved hands trembling slightly. Verification. Hail. I nodded. We ran the sequence signature alignment, key attestation, integrity check. Each confirmation tone echoed like a heartbeat returning. Then the final line appeared, deep scan standby. Authorized signers verified. The CSO glanced up, ready to enable. I hesitated just long enough for silence to settle. Then I placed my signature, deliberate and clean. The system came back to life, telemetry smoothing into order. For the first time in days, the grid exhaled. Victor's voice came through the conference line, low but certain. Let it log everything. We'll need the truth later. I unplugged the HSM, feeling its residual warmth in my palm. The room exhaled relief, but mine was different, measured, unfinished. Sometimes fixing the wound isn't enough. Sometimes you leave a scar so no one forgets where the cut began. Once Deep Scan was live again, the logs began to breathe. Each line that surfaced carried a piece of the past 3 days, every command, every failed override, every shadowed attempt to rewrite history. Caldarian's Digital Forensics and Incident Response Team DFIR was activated within the hour. Legal oversaw the process directly this time, ensuring every byte of evidence traveled under chain of custody. No improvisation, no spin. I sat in a secondary review room, separated from the analysts by a pane of glass. Screens mirrored their work in real-time hash checks, session timestamps, key verifications. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The truth was already there, waiting to be read. The first finding hit before noon, unauthorized exfiltration of a development branch marked Aegis Corps Fash-Evi next. The data had been pushed to a private VPS registered under an anonymized shell account. But the SSH fingerprint told another story. It matched Pierce Dalton's workstation, verified through Okta's identity logs. The same fingerprint had been used hours after my suspension to copy build scripts and dependency manifests. Each verification hash matched my own reference set, stored offline. There was no room for interpretation. The code lineage was absolute. Someone had tried to move my work out of Caldarian under a different name. Legal ordered a full trace. DFIR analysts reconstructed the transfer chain workstation, proxy tunnel, external node. When the playback finished, the room was silent except for the hum of the servers. One of the auditors removed his glasses and muttered, "That's corporate espionage, not negligence." Outside, the hallway filled with quiet motion, HR, compliance, security, each carrying sealed folders. Evan passed by once, face pale, phone pressed to his ear. He didn't look in. When the report reached Victor's office, it was already signed by legal and time-stamped for disclosure. The final page summarized it in one sentence. Root cause unauthorized code exfiltration via compromised internal credentials. Verified source Dalton, Pierce. No speculation, no emotion, just proof clean, digital, permanent. With the evidence secured, explanations no longer mattered. The system had recorded everything, and with custody in place, there was nowhere left for excuses to hide. The meeting wasn't on the calendar, but everyone knew to be there. Conference room 5A, frosted glass. Too quiet. The kind of silence that carried judgment. When I arrived, the chairs were already filled. Legal at one end, HR at the other. Victor sat at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up, voice measured and cold. Pierce was there too, still wearing his badge, though it meant nothing now. The DFIR report sat in front of him, each page tabbed and highlighted. He didn't look up, effective immediately. Victor said, Mr. Dalton is suspended pending legal review. His access is revoked. All devices under seizure. The words fell without weight, as if they'd already been rehearsed. Pierce's jaw twitched, but he didn't speak. 2 security officers stepped inside, waiting for the nod. He handed them his laptop and left without a sound. Evan sat 2 seats down, staring at the tabletop. His name appeared next, on a thinner folder. Formal reprimand for misuse of trial authority. Victor read, Your actions violated operational policy and triggered a compliance breach. Evan's lips parted like he wanted to explain, but Victor raised a hand. Don't. We'll address your role in governance training. For now, you observe. The air shifted when they turned to me. I slid a small silver USB drive across the table. The label was handwritten, Aegis Core V3.0 Policy Bundle and Patch Notes. Victor picked it up carefully. New build, not new, I said. Refined. The signing framework's immutable, now no single point of override. Every approval leaves a trace. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. We'll deploy it after audit sign-off. I rose from the chair, the hum of the servers audible even through the glass walls. Behind me, the boardroom monitors displayed green across every cluster. Uptime restored. No one applauded. They didn't need to. In this place, respect wasn't loud. It was written in clean code, verifiable logs, and the quiet permanence of a signature. 3 months later, the city felt lighter. The headlines had faded, the fines settled, the servers steady again. I had left Calderian quietly after the audit closed. No statement, no farewell email, just a clean handover note and one line in the changelog integrity restored. By then, Bastion Thread had already taken shape. What began as a side project in my spare hours, notes, fragments, frameworks had grown into a new company, a small team, 8 people. All former engineers who'd seen how fast trust can corrode when no one guards the chain. Our focus was simple build systems that survive their builders. Calderian became our first client. Victor reached out himself. No corporate intermediaries this time. The new contract was lean, transparent, written in plain language. I watched him sign it across the table, pen steady, eyes tired but clear. Let's not repeat history, he said. Outside, a reporter waited by the curb, one of those who had followed the breach story since the beginning. Her recorder was already running when she asked, Rowan, was this revenge? I smiled, not defensive, just honest. No, I don't need anyone to fall so I can rise. I just need room to move. She seemed to consider that for a moment, then clicked off the recorder. Across town, Evan was still at Calderian, stripped of operational authority, finishing his governance and compliance training under direct supervision. I heard he no longer spoke during meetings, that he'd learned how to listen. Maybe that was the start of something. That evening, as I left the office of my own firm, I looked back at the faint reflection of our name on the glass door. Bastion Thread. The letters glowed against the city's neon blur. Some systems rebuild themselves through code. Others through consequence. Either way, what breaks once doesn't have to break the same way twice.